This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. That was Miles Davis, blue and green. Juan, your expose in today's New York Daily News, I am going to hold it up. It's not the baseball picture at the top. It's what's underneath. And it says, named, exclusive, news IDs cop who shot retired Marine.
Yes, well, you know, I, as a longtime reporter, I know that in a small town, word gets out, especially in a situation like this, of who was involved, and it was only a matter of being able to find out. Even though officials have said nothing about who was involved, which is very rare in a case like this, that the officers are not named. And we started hearing the name of a particular officer, but it took until late yesterday, almost until the evening, till we were actually able to get confirmation that the officer who was directly involved in the shooting was an officer by the name of Anthony Carelli, who joined the White Plains Police Force in 2004 at the age of 21, and who amazingly is about to go into a trial, a federal civil rights trial, by two brothers who were arrested by Carelli and a group of officers back in 2008, a Memorial Day weekend in downtown White Plains, in a strip where there's a lot of bars and restaurants and large crowds tend to gather on weekends. And the two brothers were arrested for disorderly conduct, a charge that was later dropped. But it turns out that they are alleging in their lawsuit, a $10 million lawsuit against the police department of White Plains, that Carelli was the lead officer who brought them into the precinct and cuffed them to a long bar in the booking room and then beat one of the brothers, Jures and Hatter, and repeatedly beat him. And interestingly, in a deposition that we got a hold of in the case, Carelli claimed that because he had to explain some of the injuries that Hatter clearly had, that on the way to the precinct in the police car, Hatter repeatedly was banging his head, and from the back seat of the patrol car was banging his head against a plastic partition in the police vehicle. And so when questioned, well, what did you do? Carelli said, well, I told him to stop, but he wouldn't listen, and he kept banging his head over and over again against the plastic shield in the police car. And because obviously the young man went into the precinct with no injuries and came out, and we have a picture of him in the newspaper with a battered face. So they are now suing, claiming civil rights violations and excessive force by the police department. And then the yelling of the racial epithet. Yes, and that that while they were being beaten, Carelli was calling them ragheads inside the precinct. One brother says that we were able to reach him late at night. He said that that Carelli should not be on the force, that he beat him in the head, he kicked him in the groin, and he just wants justice. And this is while he was handcuffed to a pole in the police station. Yes, yes. Wouldn't they have video of what happened inside a police station? The police department says they have no surveillance, they have no video inside. This is the police headquarters. We're not talking about a small precinct. This is the police headquarters. There is no video of anything that happened, according to the police department. And interestingly, as you report in the New York Daily News, a man who said he was Carelli's brother answered the door at Carelli's house in Harrison, Westchester County, and told the New York Daily News, "So I assume his name leaked out today. Lovely." Right, and subsequent to that, the Harrison police arrived at the house and ordered our Daily News reporters away from the house and are now stationed outside the policeman's house to, I guess, to protect him from the cameras. In a 2010 deposition, you report, Carelli said he made about 250 to 300 arrests as a police officer. Yes, he was part at that time, in 2008, of apparently a street unit in the White Plains Police Department that specializes in the local downtown bars and, interestingly, in the public housing projects. His partner, Julio Orellana, in his deposition, says that we were doing all these quality of life arrests in places like downtown and in the project, specifically naming Winbrook, the public housing development that your father lived in, Kenneth.
Your reaction to hearing this?
Well, I'm glad that the name is out, and I definitely want to thank you, Mr. Gonzalez, for researching that and getting that out there so the public knows who this person is. Because, as you just stated, my father's incident is not the first incident. So it's almost like a snowball effect. He was beating people, and now he ultimately killed someone. So when I hear that, it just goes back to the visual of the last time I actually really saw my father, other than the funeral, was at the hospital with his eyes wide open, his tongue hanging out his mouth, and 2 bullet holes in his chest. And I'm staring at my father wondering, what happened? How did this happen? And I've often heard in White Plains that there was a unit that would go around in White Plains, and people used to say, if you're hanging out on the weekends in White Plains, be careful. And I asked them why. They said there is a unit out here that will get you and that they'll beat you up. And I said, really? And they said, yes. And then for you to reveal this information, it just brings me back to that conversation that I had with someone in the street.
We are joined right now by the lawyer for the 2 brothers who have sued the police officer, Anthony Carelli, and other police officers for their beating and arrest in 2008. His name is Gus Dimopoulos. He's quoted in Juan's piece in the New York Daily News. Mr. Dimopoulos, welcome to Democracy Now! Explain the case that your clients have against this police officer who has now been named as the shooter of Kenneth Chamberlain Sr.
Good morning, everyone. My clients were celebrating a birthday party of one of their friends at the Black Bear Salon in 2008. When they basically exited the Black Bear Salon after they had, been celebrating the birthday, they were confronted by various members of the police department, and essentially they alleged that my clients were being disorderly and causing a ruckus on the street and screaming and fighting. Ultimately, both brothers, Jerry and Sal, were arrested on the street in White Plains and taken into police custody. They were charged with disorderly conduct. They essentially alleged that while they were on the street, they were causing such a scene, screaming, yelling, resisting arrest, and doing all sorts of other things. We allege that the police officers, while in the custody of the White Plains Police Department and back at the station, severely beat Jerry while being restrained by handcuffs. They hit him in the face with a nightstick. They kicked. They punched him, and then essentially charged him with the crime. And then ultimately, when it went to trial, they were unable to prove their case. The judge in the criminal case dismissed the charges for disorderly conduct. Basically, said the cop's story didn't make any sense, and the charges were dismissed. Ultimately, in the case we have pending for excessive force, they've made similar denials, and nobody hit him. Nobody could explain how he got all the bruises and the black eyes. The only story that was able to they were able to glean from the litigation is that from Carelli himself, who basically spent the most time with Jerry when he was arrested, and he tried to allege that he was self-inflicting his wounds by hitting his face against the police divider between the front and back of the car. No other police officer corroborated Carelli's testimony on this front, and also some of the bouncers from the bars. Romantic Avenue in White Plains is a busy place, especially on a weekend night, and they called a bunch of witnesses to give deposition testimony about the event, and all of them said that he really wasn't acting the way that the police alleged that he was acting. He was perfectly cooperative when he was arrested. He didn't try to get out of the cuffs. He didn't do anything. So, you know, our allegations in the complaint is they essentially profiled him. You know, he is of Arab American descent. They arrested him and then, you know, beat him down in the police office when he was defenseless and in their custody. So, you know, we're basically making our claims under civil rights law that you know, Jerry's injuries, both physical and emotional, are compensable, and you know, it's a horrible event. It's a horrible event. And
you also allege that Carelli made anti-Arab remarks while they were in custody.
Jerry Hatter did testify that he did make several anti-Arab racial slurs towards Jerry and his brother. Absolutely.
What did he call them?
I don't have the deposition testimony in front of me, but I know that from memory that he was called I'm trying to remember the exact
you have
words,
it from the deposition.
Yeah, I think it was a raghead, or was it?
Raghead, raghead, and I think there were others in the deposition testimony. I just, without it in front of me, I'm not comfortable. But I do remember him saying, absolutely, called him a raghead.
Mr. Dimopoulos, when you heard the story of Kenneth Chamberlain, and then the fact that Anthony Carelli, the police officer who you charge in this case, having hurled the racial epithet, beat your client, that he is the shooter in the Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. case, your response?
Well, first of all, obviously to the Chamberlain family and obviously his son as well. You know, it's a horrible event, and I'm sorry that they have to go through that. You know, I heard Mr. Chamberlain's son saying before the reputation of the White Plains Police Department, and I've heard the same thing. It's a very charged police force. They're, you know, being, you know, in the line of work that I am, obviously I hear a lot about it. I've been consulted on, you know, dozens of excessive force cases. Not all of them are clear. Some of them are not. But it seems to me that the Chamberlain case, I've been following it somewhat, you know, it's a horrible, horrible tragedy. We did our own investigation to see if we could determine whether or not various police officers that we named in our complaint were involved. Of course, from the beginning, you know, as the press has been saying, it's a very hush-hush case. No one's willing to talk to anybody. Nobody's willing to give any information. But you know, I was unable to confirm any involvement, but obviously my own investigation. But it's a horrible event. If those facts are true, it's a shame and a tragedy, and really my heart goes out to the family.
I'd like to ask Abdulwali Muhammad, another one of the lawyers of the family, your reaction when you hear about this and about this officer now, because the trial in this other case is going to begin on April 23rd in federal court in White Plains.
The same story that was spun regarding this incident with these two gentlemen who were abused by the police smacks or similar to the one that was given by the police commissioner regarding Mr. Chamberlain's father, that he was a hatchet-wielding, mentally disturbed person, and that, of course, would have justified police action against him. In that story, they didn't say anything about the fact that he was in his home or that the medical alert had gone off. But for the fact that we have the tapes, we would not be able to present the story that we've had to the public and make our demands that the tapes be released, that the officer's name be released as well.
You know, you come from a very illustrious family, the son-in-law of Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis, who are famous actors, of course, but also civil rights leaders in the community. Ossie Davis was, Ruby Dee is. You live in the White Plains area in Westchester County. Does this surprise you that this took place? Abdulwali Muhammad?
Well, as Malcolm X so appropriately said, as long as you're south of the Canadian border, you're south. That's how I look at all of these incidents, whether or not it happens in Florida or it happens in California. Like you mentioned earlier on the show with the news about the sentencing of the police officers in New Orleans. You know, this is racism, it's classism. I doubt that this type of behavior would have taken place with the police department if it was in Scarsdale or some other wealthy community. They wouldn't have busted down the door. If the owners of the home told the police to go away, they would have wagged their tails and gone away.
This is 4 months ago that this took place. April 10th, the Trayvon Martin grand jury is expected to begin hearing testimony. April 11th now, after you left Democracy Now! Last Thursday, you went over to the DA's office, the Westchester County DA's office. Ken Chamberlain, what did they assure you there?
Well, there really was no real assurance of anything other than the fact that she did say that she was going to present all of the evidence to the grand jury.
This is Janet DeFiore.
Janet DeFiore, correct. So I'm hoping that she does do that. And I did say to her, when they were giving us a date around April 11th, I said, well, my father's birthday is April 12th. He would have been 69 years old. I said, so give him one last birthday present and come back with a criminal indictment on these officers. So hopefully she'll do that.
And you're talking about officers.
Yes. Even though Mr. Carelli has been named the shooter, there were other officers that were there that could have stopped that from happening. So just like in any other case, if you and I did something or I did something, you was with me, you acted in concert. You did nothing to stop him. So you should be charged as well.
So let's be clear here. On November 19th, your father, Pendant, goes off medical alert. The company isn't able to hear him in the apartment. Called the police, says it's a medical emergency, not a criminal case. The police come. He's up now. He says to them, I'm fine. Let's go to what was happening in the hallway, because there is actually another video, and that is the public housing video in the hallway. Your cousin, your dad's niece, Tanya, lived upstairs.
Correct.
She hears noise. She comes running down the stairs, and she also has a cell phone. Is that right?
Yes.
So tell us what happened from her vantage point, another way of alerting the police.
It's my understanding after speaking to my cousin, she received a call from her mother who said, go
your
down.
Dad's sister.
Yes, who told her, go downstairs and check on your uncle. Something's going on down there. And she went downstairs with her cell phone, and she told the police officers down there, I'm his niece. It didn't matter. They waved her back and continued to do whatever it is that they were doing.
On the audio recording of the Life Aid company that's recording everything inside, you hear the Life Aid people saying to the police, this order is canceled. We have made contact with Mr.
Yes.
Chamberlain. He's okay. Mayo, Bartlett, what was the response on the audio? What was the response of the police that you hear on the tape?
It's astonishing. I mean, you hear the people who called you to give assistance say, we are canceling our request for assistance. The police ignore that. They say it's too late for that. The same company says that we have Mr. Chamberlain's son who lives only 5 minutes away.
That's you, Ken.
Do you mind if we contact his son so you can speak to him? Maybe he can help you. They say we don't need any mediators. His sister, Mr. Chamberlain's sister, Kenneth Chamberlain Jr.'s aunt, was on the phone, and they were asking whether she could speak with her brother. The police said no. And at one point, when Tanya Greenhill is present, what occurs is...
This is your cousin.
Yes. She's downstairs, and she overhears the police asking Mr. Chamberlain, do you have any family? She goes over to give assistance. She says, I'm his niece. They ignore that. So they've had every opportunity to take advantage of people who could have been of assistance. And again, it's not a situation where they were investigating a crime and they're putting a civilian in harm's way. They're there to give assistance. And in particular, if you're dealing with an elderly individual, you don't know whether that person even has dementia, whether they're actually able to give you all of their medical history. If you have a family member that's present, you should take full advantage of the fact that that individual is there.
And I think that that's a critical point in discussions with you. Not only that they seem to have made up their minds that they were going to just go in there, but also that even when they did make up their minds, there was someone in full body gear that could have led the way, been the first person in there, but that person did not go in, and instead it was these officers who went in there and who then claimed that that Mr. Chamberlain came at them with a knife and they had no recourse but to shoot.
Absolutely, and in the initial report by the police department, they suggest, first of all, they neglect to mention that they were there for a medical emergency, so it leads the public to believe that they're there investigating a crime. They don't really focus on the fact that it's all within Mr. Chamberlain's home, and they give the suggestion that they are retreating from Mr. Chamberlain, when in fact everything that we can see shows us that that is not accurate. And the minute that that door is taken off of the hinges, you see the taser light up. Mr. Chamberlain is in his home, not advancing toward anyone. And then they make the decision to cut the video and the audio feed from that taser and suggest to us that somehow after this 68-year-old man who has a heart condition is shot with a taser and then with 4 beanbag shotguns, discharged beanbags from a shotgun, that he's able to still grab a knife or a hatchet and charge at them and cause perhaps a dozen able-bodied individuals who work for the Department of Public Safety to retreat. And again, they had a full-body ballistic shield with them, which is designed to prevent them from being shot. It's designed to withstand firearms discharge.
Juan, you have 5 unanswered questions in the New York Daily News, which I think are really important.
Yes, well, we wrote these in response to the fact that no one really is making any official statements.
And we have called all the authorities to ask them to be on Democracy Now!
And the questions are, why has the White Plains Police Department refused for months to release the names of the officers involved? Have any of the cops been stripped of their guns or placed on modified assignment? Will authorities release the audio and videotapes that documented the clash between Chamberlain and police? Will authorities make public the official incident report? And who was the ranking officer on the scene who ordered Chamberlain, a man with a heart condition, to be tasered?
Can I very briefly, I think that one thing that happens is when we have these incidents, we tend to ask for justice for the individuals. And I come in and I have so much respect for the Chamberlain family because in addition to seeking justice for their father, they're seeking justice for the entire community. And that means anyone who lives in White Plains, anyone who may come into White Plains, even if you don't live there, because this is justice for the entire community. We have Mr. Carelli, who is about to go to trial on a federal police brutality case where he is alleged to have used racial slurs and beaten people who are confined in handcuffs. And he's out there. He's one of the people who responds to Mr. Chamberlain. And that's troubling to me. And we have a city that has maintained a tremendous amount of secrecy to protect him so that he can continue to be out there. So now it begs the question that you have to wonder, who are your individuals policing your town? Are these people under federal investigation? Are these individuals who have beaten other people in your community? We don't have any idea. And that, to me, that is frightening. And it's a frightening prospect that a government would go to such lengths to protect individuals like this. If this was to happen in Syria, we would be calling for military action possibly. So when it's happening here, we need to be vigilant and we need to call for transparency, but these individuals shouldn't be out there with weapons.
Abdulwali Muhammad.
There's one point on the audio where the entire color or nature of the dialogue changes. Initially, there is back and forth, let us in, no, I don't want you to come in. And they begin the process of trying to go through Mr. Chamberlain's door. But it's relatively, I would say, under the law, they may have been acting, even though they were doing something which was not legal under the law, under the Fourth Amendment. The police officers were maybe conducted themselves properly to a certain degree. I don't know. But there was a certain part of that where the dialogue changed and it got very ugly. It got very ugly. And it seems as if the authority was trying to be superimposed not from the place of the law, but from a personal ego. There was ego in there that has no place in professional conduct.
I'm not sure if Gus Demopoulos is still on the phone, but
I'm still on the line, and I actually wanted to make a point on that topic.
This is the attorney for the 2 brothers, Juris and Salome Hatter, who have sued in a multi-million-dollar suit the police officer who also shot Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. Gus Demopoulos.
One of the things we tried very hard to understand during the course of discovery in our case was basically the role of White Plains' internal investigation into the allegations and into the events. And we were surprised to find out that basically there's an officer in White Plains who has his office amongst all the other officers of White Plains who, quote unquote, is the internal affairs investigator. I think he's a lieutenant. His name is Fitzmaurice. Basically, his only action in connection with the allegations of the Hatter brothers was he got a written statement from each of the officers in the arrest. So he had a 1 or 2 paragraph little statement from each of the officers that they signed, they put in the file. We questioned not only the officers involved, but we questioned the highest ranking official in the city of White Plains Police Department. We were unable to get the acting chief because he was in transition at the time, having been, he's basically new. But there really was no investigation that happened in connection to my client's allegations. It was, the day after the event, all the officers testified that Lieutenant Fitzmaurice basically said, write down what happened. And there was a signed statement, got tucked in the file. They never spoke to anybody else. They never questioned any of the witnesses on the scene or anything like that. There was no substantive investigation, and not only that, but there's no separation between White Plains' what's commonly referred to as internal affairs, someone who investigates the conduct of the police department. There's no separation between that officer and the officers who are charged in these complaints, and we found that odd. And we also found it odd that we were, through various channels, demanding depositions and records with respect to this investigation, but there were none, and they wouldn't let us talk to anyone. So I think that goes to the points that were earlier made, that it really is shrouded in secrecy what happens with these police officers.
And Gus Demopoulos, when we talked yesterday, you also were surprised that there was no camera inside the booking area in the White Plains Police Department, when you think police departments use surveillance cameras for so many other things.
I apologize. I know there's a camera. I saw it myself. But the allegation from White Plains is that the camera either wasn't operational on that night or the system was being backed up. I could never get it clear that there are cameras inside the booking headquarters. But they didn't have any tape of the incident, let's put it that way.
As you listen to this, Mayo Bartlett, you're not only one of the family attorneys, along with Abdulwali Muhammad and Randolph McLaughlin. You are a former prosecutor. You are from inside this very office that we're talking about, well, the Westchester DA's office. Your thoughts from being an insider now being outside of that?
Well, generally, whenever there's video that is beneficial to law enforcement, that video exists. It's there. You have great quality, and you can use it. And any time that the video is questionable, you don't have video. So we can ask officers. We routinely ask them when we're going to trial, did you arrive at the location in a marked vehicle or an unmarked vehicle? And when they say a marked vehicle, well, generally today we know that that vehicle is going to have video. Did you put your siren on when you were on your way there? Yes. Was there any video? Oh, I'm not sure. Which vehicle were you in? We know crystal clear because we've heard in some occasions the same officer testified that the vehicle does have a camera on one trial, but in another it does not. And
why haven't these audio tapes, the audio tape of Life Aid, which you hear the whole thing, racial slurs and all, the taser video, the public housing hallway video been released? I mean, in the case of Trayvon Martin, those 911 tapes were released immediately.
I think they absolutely should have been released. I think it's solely in the discretion of the prosecution and the police department. And given the information that we've learned today, it seems clear to me that there's a vested interest in not releasing it, just as there was in not releasing the identity of Mr. Carelli, because Mr. Carelli's going to trial within the next few weeks.
Just as there was in not mentioning the racial slur on the transcript of the audio tape. Abdulwali Muhammad.
The difference being in the Martin case that Zimmerman's not the police department.
And so we're faced now with April 11th for the grand jury supposedly beginning, possibly, and April 23rd for the U.S. District Court trial of Officer Carelli.
Right. Ken Chamberlain, your father was not only a former Marine, he was also a corrections guard officer?
Corrections officer, yes, from Westchester County Department of Corrections.
As we wrap up, your final thoughts.
Well, I guess my question has been answered as far as what was all the secrecy around the name of the shooter. And now we know. And I had a feeling about that all along. I said, something's not right. I'm surprised they haven't released the name. Something is wrong with this officer. And now we know that he has other charges pending right now. So it's very damaging, not only to him, but to the department on a whole, because people are going to start to look at White Plains Police Department and say, what type of officers do you have in there? But at the same time, I know it's not the whole police department. So we just want to bring into focus those that lack the integrity and safeguarding the people of the community.
Ken Chamberlain, Jr., again, our condolences on the death of your father, Kenneth Chamberlain, Sr.
Thank you.
And thank you very much to Mayo Bartlett and Abdulwali Muhammad, your attorneys, and to Attorney Gus Demopoulos, representing Jerice and Salome Hatter. That does it for our broadcast. We reached out to the police, to the office of Mayor Thomas Roach, as well as to the Common Council of White Plains, Westchester County, and we hope that they will join us on the show in later broadcasts. That does it for our broadcast. If you'd like a copy of today's show, go to our website.